One of the many things that fascinate me about the Mesozoic is how reptiles ruled every domain. You have, of course, the dinosaurs on land. The pterosaurs took to the sky. But in the sea, well, there be monsters. I've actually had today's model for a long time, but never got to reviewing it. But recently, Edge on YouTube declared Mosasaur Week, and that was the perfect excuse I needed to do this long overdue review. This is a 2019 PNSO Mosasaurus during that PNSO comeback period, where I was first introduced to their signature elegant white boxes that we're all so excited to receive nowadays. Jurassic World introduced Mosasaurus to the general public. But for all the inaccuracies of that version, I think insofar as it makes people aware of other prehistoric reptiles besides dinosaurs, it's a good thing, though not quite living up to the hyperbolic size in that movie. Now, you'll find many people online who've done some size comparisons. This model measures 37 centimeters, which is about 14.5 inches. And PNSO claims a 1 to 35th scale, meaning a real-life length of about 13 meters, which is very reasonable. In fact, larger estimates have reached 15 to 18 meters, which is 49 to 59 feet. And for those estimates, this model then becomes 1 to 40th to 1 to 48th scale. Whatever you choose, it's certainly long and actually surprisingly heavy. It's beautifully proportioned, with a large body and a relatively small head, which actually is one obvious difference from the pliosaurs, with proportionately bigger heads. The only model I've ever had of a Mosasaurus was this 1991 beauty from the old Carnegie Collection line, exactly 30 years ago, and you can see that the proportions are vastly different. Let's start with what I feel is the most impressive thing, and that's the color. The counter shading is reasonable for a marine animal. And you can see how the boundary between the dark and the light is tied together with this band, which is also very naturally colored, like I've seen in penguins. In addition to the gray and cream, there's also a bit of salmon pink that you can see here. And here. But the most impressive thing is the color application on the dorsal portion. There's a glistening appearance to the skin, which is also infused sporadically with glitter. And this looks exactly like the real wet skin of the fish that I've seen at the fishmongers. Contributing to the realism is simply the way the texturing is handled. Now, we do have soft tissue impressions of mosasaurs. For example, on the left you see Prognathodon, and on the right, Platycarpus. But of course, you can't see that on this scale, and these are very minute, very fine, and the wrinkling is done very delicately and in logical places such as the limb-body interface. The head is the right size, proportionately small. The eyes are very small and carefully painted with a nicely placed pupil on each side. The jaw articulates, and unfortunately mine is a little loose. I generally prefer fixed jaws, but in this case I actually quite like it. The closed position looks great. The open looks realistic, although too wide and you will run out of gum. Many mosasaur restorations have shown a forked tongue. Now if we look at squamates, most of them have forked tongues. Sculpt et al. In 2005 proposed some slight forking near the tip in Mosasaurus. And if you look inside, I'm not sure if it's just Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, but it looks to me like the tongue has a kind of split. Although I won't swear to it because this is on record on the internet, and if I'm wrong, my credibility would be really forked here. Now a really cool feature are these pterygoid teeth, which are extra rows of teeth on the upper palate. And you can see that in pictures here. And in close relatives, now, one interesting theory is that this assisted in ratchet feeding, where the upper jaw effectively pulled the prey into the mouth, just like in snakes. Although the larger, more derived mosasaurs seem to have lost this mobility, so probably not. Now, by the way, Dr. Mike Everhart is one of the experts on sea reptiles, and I highly recommend his book, Oceans of Kansas. The pedals are very realistically done. The joint looks natural, and the forelimbs are larger than the hind limbs, which is correct. And beneath the skin, you can make out the finger bones, outspread with the webbing between them. It's really interesting to me how one discovery can completely change the understanding of an animal. Now, see this bend in the tail here? Well, how much bending makes a difference to the form of the tail itself? With just a slight downwards bend, it's possible that the tail fin had just one lobe, like you see in an eel. With greater downward angulation, there's a chance that the animal had a two-lobed fin, and this in turn relates to possible swimming style. With a single lobe, it's possible that mosasaurs swam just like eels in anguilliform motion. Now that's swimming by undulating the whole body. Now a double lobe suggests instead carangiform motion, using more tail for propulsion with the body kept relatively stiff, implying more powerful tail muscles. Well, Lindgren et al. In 2013 published a discovery of soft tissue preservation in a prognathodon fossil with the clear outline of a tail fluke, proving that at least for some derived mosasaurs, the tail had a hypocercal fin, a double-lobed tail in which the vertebrae extend into the lower lobe, the ventral lobe. Now, this contrasts with the heterocercal tail fin, in which the vertebrae extend into the dorsal lobe, such as you see in sharks. As if that's not enough to muddy the waters, Dr. Kirsten Formoso in 2019 suggested that mosasaurs also use their forelimbs for locomotion in addition to their tails. Now this dual style is unique, no other animals have it, and I leave it to the experts to figure that one out. There's also a dorsal fin, which as far as I know is conjectural. Now the purpose of dorsal fins is to help stabilize an animal in the water against rolling. But mosasaurs might not need them because they are broader than fish, and these four pedals already add stability against rolling. Now finally, a quick word on something that confused me as a child, the difference between pliosaurs and mosasaurs. Now Kronosaurus, Liopleurodon, Tylosaurus and Mosasaurus look the same to me. And in fact, I remember explaining to my mother how these sea reptiles, including the plesiosaurs, were all related because of their bow plan, with the four flippers just with different heads and neck lengths. Now, I didn't know about convergent evolution back then, and obviously I didn't know the word bow plan then too. In fact, Pliosaurs and mosasaurs were very different. The pliosaurs, like Kronosaurus, unlike Pleurodon, came first, about 200 million years ago, and they belong to the order Plesiosauria, with very closely positioned phalanges. Now, mosasaurs like Tylosaurus, and of course Mosasaurus, arrived later, about 99 million years ago, and they were from the order Squamata. Their flippers had phalanges spread apart, with a webbing in between, suggesting closer links to their land-living ancestors. Pliosaur hind flippers were often larger than the fore. So this is probably wrong, but this one here is correct. Mosasaurs usually had larger fore flippers than the hind. Pliosaurs also had proportionally larger heads and rigid skulls, while mosasaurs had smaller, more kinetic ones. Well, sadly, this was the ultimate sea reptile, because after the Great Extinction, reptiles never again regained their stranglehold on the seas. And today, we only have sea turtles, sea snakes, marine iguanas, saltwater crocodiles, and models like these. So that's it for this review. Marine reptiles were truly special, and when I read stories of sea monsters, I always imagine some ancient reptile that somehow survived to this day, as unlikely as that might be. And I'm delighted to have an updated Mosasaurus. Now, if only PNSO or some other company would do an updated Plesiosaurus, now that would make me really happy. And by the way, do go check out Edge's video. And if you're a content creator of some sort, maybe even, if you write Facebook or Instagram posts, do consider putting up some Mosasaur-related content this week, and then use the hashtags in the description box below. Have fun, guys. I'll see you very soon.